stand on state sovereignty and rights. Please give us your views on at least two areas where the federal government has overreached, or do you believe the federal government has always acted correctly?
Two areas that the government has overreached right off the top of my head would be education and healthcare. I think that the growth of government, the heavy hand from Washington has clobbered innovation ultimately in education and even more recently in healthcare. I think that the healthcare bill is constitutionally suspect because it reaches in and forces individuals to purchase a product against their will. And it happens to be a product that Washington thinks is best, that Nancy Pelosi thinks is best, or President Obama. And so those are the two areas. And I could probably go on and on, whether it's the federal government coercing states into mandatory seatbelt laws and various other things that just add to government restrictions. And the fact is, it's stifling innovation. It's stifling creativity. That's what's hurting our economy. And so it should be no surprise that our unemployment is what it is, because it's this trend of government knows best. And when you look at what is a state's responsibility and others, certainly we owe the American people a lot better. And now, having served in state government, I can appreciate the fact that there is this burden. I remember certain examples where Nebraska was already doing really well, say child support enforcement, but yet the federal government came in and forced the state of Nebraska to totally redo things when it was unnecessary. That's what adds to the tax burden, and even more so, that's what certainly inhibits personal freedom and opportunity.
Ms. Davis.
I'm intrigued sometimes when we hear talk of the federal government. Let's be specific what that is. It's the representatives we elect. It's the members of Congress we elect. We get the government we deserve. And I say that because I think there are times when voters don't really know what it is they're electing or who it is they're electing. And that is one reason why, as a candidate, I certainly advocate for people turning out to vote. And I'll sometimes even say to someone, if I'm canvassing at their home or their local business, even if it ends up being for one of my opponents, please vote November 2nd. Because this idea that the federal government is somehow not part of us is anathema to me. It's our members of Congress. It's our president. These are people we send there. So again, I think this has become another lightning rod issue, because at times we forget that we are the only ones who have empowered the federal government to act in whatever way they do. I like this quote that Mark Twain many years ago stated, which is, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again but expecting different results. If we're not happy with our federal government, whether you think that there's been overreach or not, why would you send the same people back to Washington?
Mr. Hill.
Yeah, when there's many examples. It's hard not to, I agree with what Adrian said, really. Education is a good example. Healthcare is a good example. You could go on and on. The way we fund roads. Why does the federal government have to be involved in repairing a city street in a local community? Things like that. So one of the things I proposed is there are over 800 federal grant programs out there. That's how Congress micromanages the states. And a lot of what the government's done over the years, I blame the states too, by the way, whether it's coercion or bribery. The federal government coerced the states to succumb to their will, do what the federal government wants and the way they want it done. But they can also kind of bribe the states. It's a lot easier at the state level to take federal money, or at the local level and take federal money, because we think of it as free money. It's still our money. And spend it in ways that maybe we wouldn't spend our county tax dollars or city dollars or our state dollars. So, you don't have to take the blame for raising taxes to do a lot of these things with federal funds. Anything that is small, simple, and local works, or works better. Anything, the further it gets away from small, simple, and local, the less efficient it is. This isn't about, there are people at the federal level. Sure they are. But it's about organizational behavior and what works and what doesn't. And when things get further removed, more convoluted, more layers of bureaucracy, a lot of waste, a lot of inefficiency. So we need to push things down to the local level. So all these 800 plus federal grant programs should be sent to the states in block grants. Give them the money. The states know how they spent that money in the past, how they allocated it. Let those states decide how to do it. That alone would achieve a great deal of efficiency, a great deal of savings, and people would see their tax dollars spent more wisely. and they could hold their state and local politicians a lot more accountable, because it's a whole lot easier to change out a mayor and a city council than it is a president and a Congress.
Thank you. Ms. Davis will start the next question.
We will now do 4 rapid-fire yes or no questions. By the way, you are listening to a congressional forum for Nebraska's 3rd District. The voices you are hearing, other than the 3 candidates, are Mike Groney of the Western Nebraska Taxpayers Association, who has sponsored this forum, and me, Ken Rogers, from KRBN and the Rural Radio Network. First yes or no question. Will you vote to appeal the cap-and-trade legislation that passed the House this last summer?
No.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Yes.
I think you meant repeal, but repeal, correct?
Yeah.
Repeal, yes.
Mr. Hill goes next.
Next question. Should Congress remove the words navigable in the reauthorization of the Clean Water Act?
I'm sorry, remove, sorry.
This is dealing with Congress removing the term navigable, the reauthorization of the Clean Water Act.
I know what I think. I'm trying to understand the question. Just a second, please. No, they shouldn't remove navigable. No.
It's Mr. Smith?
No.
Ms. Davis?
No.
Congressman Smith goes next.
Will you vow to abstain from earmarks?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
No.
Yes.
And Ms. Davis goes next.
And do you think the federal deficit is endangering the country's future?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Yes.
Next question will be started by Mr. Hill.
We will do more yes and no as time allows. This next question comes from the Nebraska Farm Bureau. Recently, there has been a push by animal rights activists to control how farmers and ranchers raise their livestock. How do you see this issue and its potential impact on Nebraska's farmers and ranchers?
Well, it's fairly ridiculous. We've been raising livestock since the beginning of time, and farmers and ranchers, when it comes to livestock, when it comes to land, we're all humane people and we're all environmentalists. It's just a matter of degree, and extremist people in terms of animal rights would have us not eating any meat, not eating any eggs, not having milk, things like that. So. There's nothing new under the sun, really, in terms of livestock and how we raise them and how we treat them, and we're growing them for food. They're not pets. So I think we have to resist all of those efforts. When there are abuses, I think they're exceptional. I think they're rare. When abuses happen, we need to do some enforcement action. But by and large, farmers and ranchers are responsible people, and they're humane people, and so we need to resist whether it's environmental extreme efforts or animal rights extreme efforts. We've got to resist that as strongly as we can.
Mr. Smith?
I believe that the threat from animal rights activists is one of the greatest threats posed to our livestock industry that we know is big in Nebraska. And I have voted to limit the government, if you will, in terms of coming up with these new regulations. Now, the horse slaughter issue is probably the best example of the fact that it's an overreach of government and it's caused economic problems. Just when you look at the economics of equine, there's no longer, for the time being anyway, the young people having the opportunity to train a horse and maybe start a little business as a result. And that's because of some federal restrictions that have gone too far. But that's the animal rights movement is, I think, very dangerous to the livestock industry in Nebraska.
Given the fullness of time, all things are possible. I find myself in agreement with Adrian Smith. I say that because many of you know the tragedy that happened at Three Strikes Ranch near Alliance, my hometown. And this was an example of something that we'll never know, but I certainly think a large part of why it happened was because of the horse slaughter provision that no longer allows that to happen in this country. I grew up with horses. I love horses, no question of that. But again, this came down to an issue where I think people who don't truly understand livestock got a bill passed that they truly, probably in their own best interest, thought was a sincere bill. But what we have seen are examples where instead of horses being sent to slaughter, which in many ways is one of the more humane ways for a horse to go, are no longer legally able to do so. So I think this is an example where we need to recognize that sometimes the intent behind a bill could be genuine, but it's not necessarily what's best, either for us as a state or our country as a whole. I believe this question might have also come about in part because of a recent proposition that passed in California in 2008 regarding chickens and egg production. I think we should be careful to remember that happened in California, a very different state than Nebraska. So to that regard, if the state of California wants to pass its own provisions, I would have to say in this instance, states' rights. We shouldn't restrict California from passing things, even if we don't agree with it here in Nebraska. But in terms of federal legislation, there are many instances, and this is one of them about horse slaughtering, that we should recognize the bill probably was intended for good, but the actual outcome has been nothing short of disastrous.
Thank you. Congressman Smith will start the